Dear Thai, dear brothers and sisters, today is the 28th of July. We're in our last week of the summer retreat in the Assembly of Star Meditation Hall in Lower Hamlet. And we've come together to learn how to take care of ourselves, take care of our family. Thầy has always envisioned Plum Village to be like a village like this, and not like a monastery, whereas everyone put really hard effort to meditate and become enlightened, but more like a village where we come together to live as a family, and to learn how to take care of each other, to take care of our challenges, our difficulties, as well as to remind ourselves the wonders of life. And so there isn't so much emphasis on trying to achieve something. We might come here we have some intention. Some people sometimes come for a week and they have an intention to get to the bottom of their suffering or to the bottom of their challenge. And sometimes that very idea, that effort, that striving is the obstacle, because it makes us just focus on that task, and we forget that there's also the wonders of life. The children are not always boisterous and irritating and demanding. They are also flowers, and we are also that. We have our challenges, and we do want to overcome them, to understand them, and to learn how to be with them better. But it doesn't necessarily... it can also be that it's still there, but we can also enjoy walking, enjoy the flower, the grass beneath our feet. So this is the village practice. So it's not a monastery. Village practice is a family, and in the family there are challenges, difficulties, as well as wonders, beautiful moments, and these things kind of interplay. And so that's our vision for the planet, how to take care of our suffering, and also remind us the wonder of being alive on this planet. And if every one of us on this planet knew how to do that, then it would be a much more relief in the world, I think. And that's all it is. And I think you're feeling that within yourself and your family and your relationship. I've been in the practice for a while, and even in my own family and in the community, I've learned to just to see that it's not like you have to get rid of something to get something else, but actually learning to actually be at peace with both the suffering and the happiness. And so there's a tendency in us to try to get rid of one and just to want the flowers, yeah? And this is a very, for me, I was quite naive, and I even asked Thai that. I said, Thai, can I just have the flowers? I remember at the deck, and he just smiled at me. It's like, because sometimes you suffer so much that you wish there was a place that there was no suffering. It's kind of human nature. And I think we all want just to be happy. We don't want to suffer. And to be enlightened is to know the relationship between the two, and not to be grasping for one and avoiding the other. That's what is the path of interbeing, seeing the relationship between our suffering and how it relates to our happiness. And that requires some reframing. Enlightenment could be a kind of like reframing or reviewing, retelling our story. And this is, we are human beings and we have many stories, ideas and notions about who we are, about how we were raised, about our mother, our father. And these stories, we think they are really the truth. And you see as you practice, and you look at your life in 30, 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, it's all a process of actually, when you have a moment, I see, it's always a little moment of like, why do I do that to myself? It's all little moments of enlightenment, right? And that is a kind of liberation. And so the path that the Buddha discovered is a path of slowly having aha moments about our suffering, about the nature of our suffering, and how to take care of it. So today I share a little bit about some of the basic teachings of the Buddha. That is quite, if we just remember that, and then it can always help us. And I think you know already the first teaching that the Buddha gave was on the Four Noble Truths. And that is the formula for many things that happen in our life, whether it's our children, our husband, our wife, our partner, ourselves, is very related to this. So I will begin with that Four Noble Truths. There is suffering, or I like how Thai sometimes uses ill-being. And this goes back to our tendency, as I share, we don't like suffering and we just like happiness. That's like the first, the Buddhist path can be seen as retraining, reviewing, and I like to use the word reconditioning. We're conditioned to just run after happiness, things that give us pleasure, and to run away from suffering. And we have many ways to avoid that and to suppress it and so on. And I think with the families here, we the monks and nuns, we play with the children. And for me personally, when I play with the children, I get to see their character. I get to see how they are being raised, the habits they have. And I can really, I can also sense that it's going to be a source of suffering for this one. I have a Dharma sharing family, and at dinner time, it's very clear that there's going to be something. And, I think you're aware of that too. But somehow we don't put ourselves in that. As adults, we see it in the children, it's like, okay. But actually, do we see ourselves like that? Do we see that actually we are also have been conditioned? Maybe we forgot some of that, but it is still in us. So we have ways that we've been conditioned by our family, our mother, our father, our society. And that is a source of suffering because of the way we have notions. And so this is And there's I like to, in my practice, it's helped me to identify some of the, like 3 things that I keep returning to. And one is our notion, our habits first, our tendencies, our conditioning. Right, our habits. So if you begin to see yourself as just a bunch of habits, as a really enlightenment. You think you're free, but actually that is kind of a delusion. Of course we are free, but it requires some mindfulness, some concentration, and some awareness. But most of the time we are very conditioned. And enlightenment is to realize that actually a lot of it is our habit. A very clear example is, and some of that habit is biological. It serves a purpose. We're hungry, we go eat. But there are other habits. There's a habit like brushing your teeth. It's like you were born not brushing your teeth. And why do you do it every day? See, right away, that's a very clear one. And wearing clothes is also a habitual. We call it culture, right? So there's a lot of habits, and in a broader sense, it is our culture, our conditioning. Habits and notions. We have so these are some ways that I've traced my own kind of ill-being. Notions. We have ideas. We're so proud that human beings can think. We're creative. We can remember. We can plan. But actually, part of that is that we like to hold on to our way of our notions, our ideas about what happiness is, what the purpose of life, what these people are like, what our culture is like. The Vietnamese culture, the Asians are like this, the Germans, the French are like that, and so on. So we have these ideas. My brother is like that. My sister is like that. I am like that. We try to get along. Okay, yeah? And so these things is a source of suffering. Our habits, our notions, and also I also have some what I call wounds. And like the children I see, the way they're growing up, they also have conditioning from their ancestors, from their parents, from their grandparents, so they not only look like their parents and their grandparents. I met recently a child has blonde hair as the son. And the mother and father said to me, she came out of the dining hall and she had brown hair, and her daughter had blonde hair. And I said, wow, beautiful blonde hair. It must be from the father. And it's like, no. We don't know where the blonde hair come from. The mother said that to me because she has brown hair, and then the father came out of the dining hall, and I looked and I was like, okay. And they go, but they say they don't know where it come from. Isn't that nice? I was like, it's probably from your grandparents or even their great-grandparents. And you can see, so it's not just your physical trait. You're also getting habitual traits. And you can see this in your nieces and nephew and their relation. I have a brother and sister, and I know them somewhat. We grew up together. And every time I go home visit, and I see my niece and my nephew, oh my gosh, I see my brother and my sister. You ever see that? See, so it's not just their traits. They're also, because of their wounds or their habits, they're also being transmitted these things. And I think this is very very easy to understand. But we sometimes live without this awareness. And this is why being aware of our suffering, being aware of our ill-being is so important. Why they call it the noble truths. Is here the truth here is not it's like dogmatic and it's the only thing, but it's a way to help us. So being aware of this, and it makes it noble because it actually makes us very careful. So if we're aware that actually we are conditioned, and each person has a notion, and they also have maybe some slight wounds that we have to be careful of. Some of them might have some trauma, so even we're more sensitive. So when we are aware of suffering, it helps us be more mindful. So you see the nature of the nobleness of it? So that's just to understand that it's not like, oh, everything is suffering now. Oh. So suffering is a way to help us be more mindful. Actually, suffering, I think you've noticed, when you suffer, you're more humble. Right? When you don't suffer and you're really who you are, healthy and confident, you're quite easy to hurt somebody. But when you're suffering and you need help and care, you're actually a very tender and kind person. So actually, suffering is really good for humanity, you know? Suffering is good for a nation, you know? If only a nation could just stop and just come back, rather than going around and telling people what to do. So this is, and if we are aware of this, then it can really help us. The other thing to be aware of is the cause. I'll use the conditioning. In Buddhism, what is beautiful, the Buddha, when he was enlightened, when he found, he touched the nature of reality, that moment can be described as he realized the interconnection of everything. It's such a beautiful moment if we can ever touch that. So everything has conditions that give rise to something else. And that's a very good exercise. And very scientific. If those who love science and the modern ways of thinking, try to find one thing that can be by itself and independent of everything else. I've done that exercise, and everywhere you look, socks, look, your headphone, all these formations, all these things that come together. And this is not just in the physical realm, the trees, the flower, the clouds. The clouds, you think they're conditioned, see? So we in other words, we use the formation. Everything comes together because of other condition. And so it's not just the physical manifestation or condition, but it's also our feelings and our emotions, our notions, our habits. So it also deals with the area of behavior as well as in the area of our mind. So we think our feelings, we think our habits, they also come from conditioning. Our notions, our ideas, you think they're yours, especially for artists, you think you came up with that original idea. That's quite egotistical, and you sign your name. It's like, I came up with this beautiful painting. But actually, if you had time, you would probably figure out where it came from. And it might be a new idea, never done before, but it has some relationship to other ideas. The same thing with our pain, our suffering. So this is, if we know where the ill being, if we can touch its cause, its the different condition that made that, it's also a kind of enlightenment. You begin to see, I keep smoking when I am anxious, when I feel nervous. It's not because I want to smoke. Same thing with the drink. I feel uncomfortable. And if you realize, and you just be more mindful, and you can slowly go into what is underneath, the energy that is making the habit, that is pushing, that is pulling you. So these the two tendencies in Buddhism is very nice. One is to run towards and run away. And it's like very basic in Buddhism. Grasping and aversion. Very basic habits of us. Don't want suffering, want peace. Don't want my life, I want to go to Plum Village, I want to stay in Plum Village, I don't want to go back. I'm sorry, a father said to me last week, can you talk to the office and just figure out how I can stay here longer? In the office, they are up to here about all the requests to stay longer. And I was like, no, you bring Plum Village with you. Don't be afraid. And it's like, now you understand why you continue to do that in your family. It's a matter of training. And I really felt for the father. I wish everyone could stay here. Just until they feel confident to leave. But like 1 week, he was quite nervous. And so it was it was a tough, it brought me a lot of pain. I almost wanted to, I couldn't deal with it because it was a logistical thing. And also the family also wanted to go back. So there's a tendency. The mother is different idea, different notion, and the father has different notion. And you see the suffering, and it's a tough situation. So the monks and nuns, we also get a little taste of family life when you come here, and we listen to both sides. The most difficult for us is not to choose a side. We as monastic, we have to stay right there. It's like, look, you're right. And I have to tell the mother, yes, you're right too. But when they're both together, I say, it's very hard for me to say, both of you are right. And they're like, they want me to be on their side, And I say, both of you can be right at the same time. It's learning how to dance with it. And so this is very family life. And I live in the community. It's not just husband and wife. I have 100 brothers and 100 sisters. And it's a very beneficial training. So that's why Thai said, before you get married or have a partner, please come and live here for 1 year. And learn how to be and to take care of yourself, and learn how to be here and not right or wrong, or you and me are different. These notions, our training is to stay there. Say, look. Anyway, I'm getting tangent here. So our tendency is to always choose left or right, good or bad, my view and your view. The other beautiful thing that I think Thai helped me with is he helped me to pay attention more to the well-being. There is also, I mean, this is not in the sutra, this is rephrasing from how it helped me. It's important to say there's, for me, it was also important to say there's also well-being. Meaning, for me personally, I came from a family that had a lot of challenges. My parents were refugees from Vietnam. They lost everything, and so they had to grow in a country very foreign to them, did not know the language. So my mother and father not only have the stress of raising a family, but in a totally different culture. So there was a lot of suffering in our family. And so that was a tendency for me to, I don't want any more of that. And what Thai helped me with is actually, it's okay to have some of that, and some of the habits and notions and wounds and pain, but also, you can also enjoy life. It doesn't have to be everything. So like I remember washing dishes became my practice. Just washing dishes. It's not a chore, it is not a thing to get rid of, to get done, so you do something else. I remember my first retreat. I enjoy finishing my meal so I can go to the bucket, and back then we had purple water in the third bucket, and I really enjoy it, and especially coming to the purple water and you put your hand, and I remember putting my hand there a little longer, and you actually take your time to wash your dishes. And for me, what that meant was like there are other things for us to enjoy rather than always about our ill-being, our suffering. So those things don't have to go away. So the also here gives us a little bit more space, that they can be together, that we can still have some pain, but along that we can also have joy and happiness and peace. And slowly with the practice, you learn how to adjust. Yeah, it's very, very doable. And here there is a path. So of conditioning. So I'll keep using the word conditioning. Recently I was inspired by, sometimes the word for meditation can be translated as a training or cultivating. And recently we had a neuroscience retreat, and we had a lot of neuroscientists that deal with trauma and in therapy. And they were very interested in mindfulness and in Buddhist psychology, as well as the science, the neuroscience, the things that trigger us. And it was very interesting to see some presentation from the scientists, and it just stuck with me that it's about conditioning. And there is a way to do that. And this is what's beautiful about the Buddhist path, that there is a way out. And that we don't have to, we can be free, and we can actually we can change our ways of behaving, our ways of looking. These the Buddhist path, if you say there is an aim, is to remove our views and notions. That is the highest that we can touch. We call right view. So in our path, the liberation, the salvation, as Thai would call it, is to actually change our view. Isn't that beautiful? We don't have to change the world, but we change our view. Our view, right? About the nature, our view about suffering and happiness. Happiness is here, suffering is there. Well, actually, we run away from our suffering and our happiness. So So the right view sometimes is also shared as the view of the middle way. You see the relationship? In Buddhism, we're very allergic, and we try not to be too caught in dualistic view. Usually our tendency is like that. But you can tell someone, a brother's attainment or realization by whether he actually, the tendency that he has. Attachment to good food, attachment to chocolate, attachment to a certain project, attachment to a certain way. I like to be born by myself. I don't like too many people. So these notions, you live together and you can see, and they go more subtle and subtle and subtle. And if you live together in the community, it's a great place to experiment with this. Yeah, you only have husband and wife and a few children. That's easy. Oh, maybe not. But if you begin to see life, the world, is for us to explore the nature of peace, the nature of how suffering arises. If you begin to see your family as an experiment for you to like, I wonder where he got that from, honey. It makes things a little easier, huh? So remember, okay, ask your husband, ask your partner, and hopefully the more you bring your family, you can begin to ask your children. So, honey, where did that come from? Where do you think that tendency comes from? Imagine having a conversation with your children like that. Where did you get that? Did you get that from me or from daddy? And they, well, I think I got it from you, mommy. I love to argue. That would be a great conversation in beginning anew. Yeah? So this is conditioning, and this is my weakness, and what I'm working on is the conditioning here. I like the word assumptions, and this is very subtle. And I see more and more. Actually, I'm on a level of practicing because I assume a lot of things. I have a lot of assumptions about my sisters, a lot of assumptions about my elders, assumptions about what the purpose of Plum Village is. And so these things, assumption about my own self and my role now. And so it becomes even very, really more fine and fine. So this is, see, conditioning is not just like behavior. So the more you be aware that actually you have a lot of assumptions about things, it is you're on the path. But we forget. And this is very why we're here, to generate. And the three generate more energy. So we are more mindful and less forgetful. If we are more every day remembering that there's ill-being in us, in the world, but there's also well-being in ourselves and in the world, if we are more aware of that, the way we walk is very beautiful with the planet, right? But most of the time we're just caught in a way of thinking, a notion, or some emotion we're having, and we forget these noble truths. And so the three energies that we use, and I just briefly go over, and we use this a lot. These three energies. In the upper hamlet, We have a stained glass window that has the three Simriti, Samadhi, and Praja. Energies. We need this. Mindfulness can be seen as being aware of our feelings, aware of our body, aware of what's going on. So we train all through Plum Village. When the bell sound, come back to your breath, become aware of your breath. I'm alive. I can breathe. It's fresh air in the countryside. See these things? When we become aware, we can begin to nourish and create a new habit to pay attention to the well-being. So that is the awareness. Concentration is a kind of maintaining it, sustaining it. It's kind of like you have to have to cook the potato there. You have to keep it, stop opening up the lid. So this is also what's required, and I think concentration could be, how do you call it? Making the neural pathway in the neuroscience retreat, neural pathway more defined. So to begin to compensate for these ideas, we need these energies, and we need to do it regularly. And if you learn anything from Plum Village, it's about the schedule and the regularity. And the more you do, the more you're aware. And not just in the meditation hall, but while you're walking to the dining hall, be aware of your steps. And Thai has emphasized a lot on the walking meditation. And why is that? Because most of our day is we're on our 2 feet. So it's a wonderful way to train, and an easy way to, not easy, is you have many opportunities. Make a step, and you're aware of your steps, and you recognize, am I with my steps, or am I distracted? So you breathe in, I've arrived, I'm home, arrive, I'm home. So what does this have to do with my suffering? If you can manage being focused on your breath and your step, that will be the energy that will keep you aware of what is going on. So when the fire is burning, when the house is in trouble, these energy will help us. So when we have a strong emotion come up, it is the same breathing, the same stepping that will allow us not to run, not to find something or needing something, yeah? And not to push it away or turn on the TV or get on the internet or grab a book or get some food. So the tendency, our habits, we begin to be aware of it. And these training of walking, of breathing, so you put all of your energy into the bottom of your feet, and you put all of that there. And you train to have the habit of actually transferring the energy down. Because most of the time we have emotions and we have strong stuff that come up, very highly, all the energy is up here. So we learn to bring it down. So when we have feelings come up or a past memory come up, we learn to take that energy and move it through the body. And the focus on the feet is wonderful transfer. You see, So you train this habit so that when these trauma, these emotions come up, you have a handle. And what's beautiful about Thai, he shared, and I don't think I found any teacher share this yet, is like, you just need to know how to suffer, and you will suffer less. I mean, that is, and you have many people, teacher tell you, you need to know how to suffer. And that's kind of strange, just teacher tell a student, it's like, you need to go back and learn how to suffer, and you will suffer less. And I was like, wow. First time I heard that, I'll never forget it. I was like, that is so true. And you see the also? And you don't need to get rid of one side to have the other. It's so, but it's very hard to do. Right? It's very hard to be with our suffering. And this is, that is the, as a young man, that was the hardest thing for me to actually to admit that I have ideas about my father, and that those ideas are the suffering. And it's not like my father is causing me suffering, he's causing suffering to the family, but it's actually the way I look at it. And that was a moment for me. And so these insight, we need insight. And so when we practice awareness and we maintain this awareness, not forgetfulness, aware of our family, aware of our own upbringing, we just learn to be with it and learn to nourish yourself. So the first 4 exercise and the full awareness of breathing, the sutra, is to take care of our body. So the breath, and then our body. So the breath and the body are very connected. And the second 4 and I've always wondered about this, and I'm still wondering about it. And the Buddha, when it comes to feelings, the first 2, the Buddha encourages to learn to generate joy and happiness. And then to recognize our other feelings. And I imagine these feelings, the pain, the kind of difficult, the challenging feelings. So we just say maybe the other painful stuff. And learn how to calm it. So calm is here, and calm is here. So you see what Thai is sharing? Learn how to take care of your suffering, and then learn how to nourish your joy and happiness. So this right here is where they can go together. And actually, if we look closely, we see in health, in recovery, you don't operate, you don't treat the illness unless the person is healthy enough. And so the same with the psychology. Don't try to dig it up. Don't pick at the wound until you have enough nourishment and joy in your life. That they should go together. So the healing is not about retreating and being with your suffering only. the healing is also going out in the garden, picking going out to enjoy nature, to find also nourishment at the same time as you're, yeah? And that is where it's difficult, where we have to train not to push the suffering away and to just run after the other. See the dualism again. So here is actually where, there's a question like, in Buddhism they tend to say, just keep everything neutral and be mere awareness and just accept everything non-judgmentally and so on, and there will be, and that is the liberation. And I think this is something for us to contemplate. That the Buddha actually, he emphasized us to nourish ourselves first. And I think in human behavior you can probably understand, if you're not happy, you cannot heal and help anybody. And I think in behavior it's already, you can see. And that's why in beginning anew or in sharing a difficulty, the brothers and sisters encourage, when you do so, you have to have 3 flowers to 1 compost. Or maybe 2 flowers and 1 compost. Yeah? Because it's very hard to share a suffering. Share, you have this strong habit, honey, and you start right off like that, and that person will not listen to you. It's like, look, no. But if you start off, honey, I'm so appreciative you're in the family. This whole week you've been so kind. And I just want to let you know, and I know you've been really hard this week, so you begin to appreciate them. You share their beautiful qualities. I know it's really tough for you this week, and it was very tough for me, and that's why I think the other day I kind of exploded at you, and then we exploded back, and then you start to begin to look at what happened. You see the flower and the compost? You get to the compost, if you start from the top, go the flower, then the leaf, and then the smelly. But don't go like, I appreciate you, but, I'd like to tell you something. That's like you chop the flower, You have to be don't you ever use the word but. Because I notice I'm very allergic to okay, what do you want? Okay, go ahead. You were just doing the other stuff out of protocol. It's non-violent, but you want something. So we have to be very careful. People are not, trash bin. And your wife, your husband, your partner, they're a flower. And we need to take care of them. And we ourselves are flowers. So we need to take care of the compost, the earth, the pot. And if we can take care of the pot, the soil, keep it healthy, the season will have its own thing. And soon you have to let go of some leaf, And so the nature of the practice is very, I would say, very organic. Yeah? And this is, for me, you remember I wanted just this? and it's just a beautiful a way of looking at our nature of suffering and happiness, that they need each other. And, famous, Thai would say, left and right. So the Buddhist path, the insight, the right view is to slowly, with the practice of mindfulness, of concentration, these things will help us hold that insight, the concentration. So in Buddhism, the insight is not something, I get it, and then it's... But the insight need to actually have influence on our habits, the way we think about each other, we think about ourselves. These insights of impermanence, of interbeing, of peace, they should help us heal and not just become another notion. Especially you come to Plum Village and you have all these ways and ideas, how things should be in your family. That's great, that's an insight. But it becomes a notion when you come home and you tell your family to do it like that. You see the difference? So the insight should help liberate you, and not the insight should, all of a sudden, now you have an idea, a notion of how things should be. And this is very important in relationship. And many of us are in relationship, and this is something we all are practicing with, how to liberate ourselves from our habits, from our notions, and to heal with our wounds. And me, Thai has also helped me understand that, some of our wounds are there still, and we just have to have trust. We don't have to always try to get to the bottom of it, but that we know it's there, and it's not completely healed, and it's okay. Yeah, that's also a beautiful, compassionate practice. So don't push yourself so hard to heal, and you can sense that habit. Wherever you get sick, have you ever gotten sick and you want it to get over quickly? That is a habit. But actually, sickness is a healthy thing. It's your body reacting to foreign stuff that is trying to... So sickness is actually, you lay there and it's hot and you're sweaty. It's actually your body is doing exactly what it needs to do. If it's not doing that, then you're in trouble. But we rush it. We take medicine to kind of hurry up, let's get this heat over with, this aching, and your body is doing that. And I remember practicing this in my third, fourth year. I remember getting sick in the Turtle Lodge. I remember laying there and not taking any medicine, just drinking hot water and enjoying my sickness. I know it sounds funny, but I invite you, next time you're sick, don't have the habit of seeing that this should not be happening. Let's get this over with. If you can handle that, then you will look at your suffering differently. And when you suffer, okay, I'm going through again. I'm feeling sad. No one understands me. I'm misunderstood. And learn to be, don't rush that. Because we rush that, therefore the insight, you miss the opportunity. So the secret to the practice is being present to it. Being fully present and accepting it. And then it will have a teaching for us. That is what the Buddha did. He tried really hard the other way, suppression and the body and this world of suffering. Remember, he went to many teachers. And what happened? He burnt out. The Buddha burnt out. I shared this in the last retreat accidentally. I hope it's not disrespectful. But the Buddha burnt out after many, many months trying to overcome suffering. And he almost died crawling to a river, they say, But I like to just simply say the Buddha burnt out. And we burnt out, striving to get to the bottom of it. And for me, the Buddhist teaching is much more compassionate. And the Buddha realized that we don't have to try so hard, or try to force our family, force ourselves. Our practice is more humanistic, or earthlistic maybe, yeah? The planet Earth is so forgiving, Mother Earth. Okay, you ruined me, all this toxin, you're going to blow me up with all these nuclear weapons. It's okay. I will come back. I'll see you again. Mother Earth is saying that. But when we wake up to this, it will help us. It will help us know how to behave towards each other, towards the animals, towards the forest, towards the ocean. And I think this enlightenment is Thai will share needs a collective awakening. We need to, each one of us, go out there and be differently in our family, be differently in our neighborhood, be differently wherever we go, in the workplace, in the grocery store. So each one of us need to maintain this concentration, that everybody is in them is a little child as well. They're not just an adult, they're also a product, a conditioning of their family. And when we see like that, like, okay, I understand. That's why you're giving me a hard time. You hold that. Recently I was in an office and, somebody very, and you, see, you remember. But we forget, because he stir you up and you get emotional, and then what happened? It's like, you judging me because I look different. You judging me because I'm Buddhist. These notions, just let go. Just, poor young one. You see the child in them. And all of a sudden your viewpoint, your notion change. You see, okay, yes. So this is the way we need people to walk around now. And this is a good start. Start here with your family, with the children. So when you wait in line for food, maintain this awareness. Every child is receiving something different. When you wait in line for lunch, for dinner, maintain this compassion for all the beautiful mothers and fathers who bring their children here. And all of a sudden, the way you look at children, the way you look at people, not afraid. You see, we have certain conditioning that we're afraid of people. We're afraid of a child crying and you ever seen a young boy with the mother? Right there in the dining hall, And I see some are very afraid. Some men are afraid of that. And it's because we're losing our concentration. See, you focus on the mother and say, oh, poor mom. And then you support the mom and the dad. And slowly, each year they come. And I've seen this from, it's so beautiful. Now, teenager running around, and the way they look at the world very different. And so please be aware of that. And that's Thai's vision for us. It takes a long time, because it's not revolution. It's a small, slow self-revolution. So this is our teacher's love, and we need to continue it and to spread it out and to pass it to our young ones and to those we come in contact with. So please help Thai to help the monks and nuns by your practice. And thank you for coming to enjoy and to supporting us.